Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. And this is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Peter Ndoro, and this is what's coming up on the show today. We'll be unpacking the ongoing spat between veteran journalist Karima Brown and the political party, the EFF. This after Brown brought the matter to the High Court this past week. We also take a look at what students at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology in the Western Cape have had to say about the upcoming elections and what their expectations are. We'll also be joined by a Sudanese journalist in Khartoum who will be unpacking Sudan uprising and taking us through what the newspapers are reporting in her country this morning. These are just some of the stories that we'll be tackling on the show. But first, let's take a look at what's on the front pages of your Sunday newspapers this morning. And we start with the Sunday Times and the headline story there: SARS is going after ANC top brass in the Bosasa scandal. It looks like the Revenue Service is going after top politicians, officials and business people that benefited from Bosasa's dodgy dealings as disclosed in the state capture inquiry. Claims of over 250 million rand are being investigated against others, former President Jacob Zuma, Minister Nomvula Mokonyane and Zuma Foundation Chairperson Dudu Myeni. The City Press is focused on Deputy President David Mabuza, who is asking the question why the ANC's Integrity Commission has singled out him and 21 other people on the party's election list for an ethics review. He apparently told the City Press that he would quit if convincing reasons are given. The Sunday Independent is leading with what they say is a police probe on former President Jacob Zuma's allies on alleged theft of an 8 million rand painting and money laundering. The paper is reporting that the ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule was interviewed by the police at the party's headquarters over a Pierneef painting owned by government at the time that he allegedly gave to one of his bodyguards whilst he was the Free State Premier. The Sunday Tribune is leading with a story about how Durban is reeling from a week of deadly floods and how the city is heading into a storm of its own by disgruntled workers threatening to sabotage the city's water and electricity supplies. The Weekend Argus has a story saying that Zuma allies are under scrutiny. The paper says that police are investigating Ace Magashule, the public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane, and other high-ranking officials for their alleged involvement in various crimes, including money laundering and corruption. All right, so there's quite a lot to get through on the show, and helping us make sense of all of this, I'm going to introduce my guests, and we are joined by foreign editor Sophie Mkwena. Thanks very much for joining us. Welcome
morning,
to the program.
Peter. Morning to the viewers.
And we're also joined by a researcher at Media Monitoring Africa, Azola Diale. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Peter Ndoro.
All right, let's go straight into our first story. Veteran journalist Karima Brown approached the Gauteng High Court this past week to hold the EFF accountable for having received death and rape threats from the party's supporters. This after EFF leader Julius Malema posted a screenshot on social media showing Brown's contact details in March. Earlier this month, Brown approached the Electoral Commission and the IEC, currently investigating Brown's complaint. Karima versus the EFF. Let's discuss now. Thanks very much for joining us, both of you. And we're going to use this as an example, really, but I'm really more concerned about this tension between politicians and the media in general. But let's start with Karima Brown. And let me start with you, actually, Azola. What's your take? As Media Monitoring Africa, these are things that you observe and take note of.
Definitely. So as Media Monitoring Africa, for the past 5 years, what we've been doing is to, of course, protect journalists and support media freedom. So the tension between journalists and politicians, particularly the case of Karima Brown and the EFF leader, Julius Malema, is a case that we've also sort of taken up in the sense that we were the ones who reported some of the tweets, the original tweet by Malema, which involved doxing, so revealing personal information, particularly the cell number of Karima, where she was then threatened by a lot of people online. It's for me, it's really an attack on democracy, particularly at a time where we are going into elections. So the tension is really not healthy. It's not, putting forward public discourse. If anything, it's just causing a rift between the Fourth Estate and the legislators of the country, pardon me.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more generally about it, but Sophie, what's your take on the Brown versus EFF story as we start to look at the bigger picture?
I want to start with a general response and then come to Karima Brown and the EFF. When this tension started, it was there all along, and let me put it clear, all political parties are doing it, all of them. They do threaten editors, they do sometimes get angry when stories don't perhaps favor their own thoughts. They do it with everybody. I am sure if you were to interview the SABC's News GE right now, Patiswa, she can tell you stories in terms of what she has to deal with behind the scenes. But being a professional, she deals with everything behind the scenes and then try to ensure that our coverage, but also the relations, not personal relations, with our customers, newsmakers, be it business or ordinary viewers or politicians, it's not compromise. It's a professional relationship. Therefore, when it started with the SANEF to and fro with the EFF, I personally, as a member of SANEF in my capacity, called Advocate Dalimpofu to say, can't we, as SANEF, find a solution to this matter? He had promised then that in January, remember that was towards end of last year, they will look at this at their Central Command meeting, and then they'll come back and perhaps, we sit down and we don't necessarily have to agree, but to just indicate where we come from as the media and what are their concerns, because they have legitimate concerns in some of these issues. We also have legitimate concerns in some of these issues. You cannot label people as fascist, as Hitlers, as corrupt when no court of law has kind of made a pronouncement. But also for them also, they can't make allegations that they can't substantiate to say journalists are biased, journalists are white monopoly capital. So I think a very important way forward is for media and the EFF to have this private meeting where we can slug it out or battle it out. We don't necessarily have to agree. Now, coming to Karima Brown, this is not new. For those who don't have selective amnesia, you would recall this thing started to intensify when there was a fallout between Mbeki and Zuma, where journalists were, you either a Zuma or a Mbeki, you either a communist or, those labelings started there. And there was a website, Friends of JZ. Fortunately, Google is there. You can still Google the insults that were directed to different journalists around the country. And now it's a culture. It has become a culture. And you must remember at that time, most of the EFF leadership, they were in the ANC, they were young. And they saw leaders doing these things. So sometimes it's a question of we have to go back to say, where did we go wrong? All of us as a country, none of us are holy in terms of different sectors and professions so that we can address these problems. And coming to Karima, fortunately in this country, we have systems in place and institutions to deal with any challenge that we are facing. If you are aggrieved, the court of law is there. For example, like Karima has done, she went to the IEC, she couldn't find joy there. She has now taken the matter to the court, which is fine, and let the court pronounce. And whatever the outcome, when all processes are exhausted, because they can still even go to the Constitutional Court, whoever is found wanting must really do the right thing based on what the court will pronounce. So I am happy that rather than continuing with this spat in public, Karima has decided to follow the available avenues as a professional. That's what we expect from her, because she has to lead by example. And the EFF must go and respond to this. And I am definitely sure the Court of Law will finally pronounce. And after that, I think SANEF must really have a meeting with main political parties, particularly those going to Parliament, to say, let's do things differently, because you still have local government coming, and also going to Parliament. You want journalists to cover Parliament without fear or favor. So I'm saying, let's follow the Court of Law process now, because it's there, and it's good that Karima is following what many should be doing in terms of using the institution that the South African public fought for pre-1994 to ensure that we have a better country.
All right. Azzola, Sophie raised an interesting point there, and I just wonder from your monitoring kind of work, whether you've seen that it is both sides. It's not just the political parties, that journalists have been found wanting at times as well. Is this something that you've observed?
Not necessarily with our monitoring, but personally it is something that I have observed. So what our monitoring is looking at is the share of voice around what is being reported and who gets to speak the most. So in that, we have found that it's nothing new really, but what is to be commended now is that citizens have been giving a much greater voice than they've been before. But of course, the share of voice is amongst the top three parties, being the ANC, the DA and the EFF, and it's proportional to their representation in Parliament as well. So that is definitely a good thing, and the fact that after political parties, it's citizens, so it's definitely a good thing. But in terms of the media being found wanting, I think personally it's really an issue that is a serious one, and as Uma has said, that after this court case between Julius Malema and Karima Brown, that SANEF and any other stakeholder within the media have to meet with political parties, particularly those going to Parliament, to find a way forward. Because for a democracy, for a democratic country to have media and legislators of the country being on two opposite ends of the spectrum, whereas they both are, pushing democracy, it's really not a healthy issue. It's not a good issue at all.
Okay, I do need to go to a break, but Sophie, maybe very briefly, without naming parties in particular, can you give us some examples of the kinds of pressures that they put on journalists, phone calls that you may have received in your time?
Well, all parties, I want to emphasize, all parties. Perhaps I took a decision not to go public and perhaps report, because I think I'm strong enough to kind of engage whoever, who wants to engage me and who's aggrieved. All parties, particularly this time, they want coverage. It's understandable. And they want cameras everywhere where they are. They won't even ask you about a radio reporter or a digital reporter. They don't even realize that radio is the most powerful tool. For example, during the week when they are campaigning, who's watching TV? People are listening to radio. People are using the latest technology. Therefore, it is the digital platform and the radio that gives you a better platform when you want to communicate with the masses in and outside the country. So they will call because they want cameras there, and they will accuse you of covering so and so like this, using the... They even check what kind of pictures you are using, how long was the sound bite, and how far was the mic, the sound, which is good, because they really want to ensure that they get a fair coverage. And therefore, you just have to explain yourself. Sometimes you are too stretched. You can't be everywhere. You engage them. You tell them, I couldn't do the story today, but tomorrow we'll definitely cover you. My only concern is that the coverage this time around was personality-driven and very focusing on the spats more than unpacking the current manifestos, because South Africans don't care about they are worried about better life and the challenges.
We're going to cover the election coverage actually a little bit more detail just now. In fact, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll start looking at elections, and we'll start with a youth view.
Le moto yoyise abantu abaninzi abafundileyo kakhulu ukudlula wena. Intoni ongayenzayo namhlanje uyi-drop out yase-primary school ngo-standard 5?
Relax. I wasn't always this good. I never went to school, so I never had a job. But today, I can make myself and my clients happy thanks to Ekurhuleni Artisans and Skills Training Center, which offers practical training on bricklaying, boiler making, electrical, and many more. Ekurhuleni Artisans and Skills Training Center, your gateway to success.
Be ready when the future calls. To share your ideas, your talents. Celebrate moments that matter. Nurture your family and community. Passion, determination, hard work. That's what drives you. Imagine a bank that's passionate about supporting your growth, that joins you on your financial journey and is part of your future. That's you Bank, growing with you.
Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Now, with just days to go to the May 8 elections, the youth vote continues to be a talking point, with most indications showing that they don't seem to be all that interested in the polls. Worryingly, the number of 18 to 19-year-olds who've registered to vote this time is down by almost half from the 2014 general elections. Let's now hear from the young people themselves about this and other election issues, as we've been inviting journalism students from around the country to tell us their stories from campus. And today we hear from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology.
The Cape Peninsula University of Technology is a campus situated at the heart of the political landscape in Cape Town, District 6. Yet, despite the historical significance of this site, the climate ahead of the May 8th general election is one characterized by disinterest and apathy, as students here say the promises and messages from the different political parties do not speak to them.
As much as people say one vote makes a difference, I don't believe in it fully, but the reason I'm voting is because I know that if you don't vote, the votes that people that don't vote, their vote automatically goes to the ruling party currently, if I'm not mistaken. So just voting to play my part in South Africa.
Known for being a very vibrant campus when there are SRC elections every year, students say that the slogans on the various political posters do not resonate with their hopes and dreams for the future of this country.
I don't really agree with them or believe them, simply because they've been saying, as you know, that they are promising us more. It's nothing new. It's something that we already know and we used to.
There are a lot of political parties first, which is I don't understand why, because we're having the same problem.
The Western Cape has the highest number of registered political parties in the country at 106. But according to some CPUT students, the party's messages have not done enough to make them want to participate in the upcoming polls.
It doesn't really, I see it, but it doesn't really put any pressure on me to vote.
Billboards I've seen around the city are appealing to me, however, I feel some of them aren't always achievable.
The youth constitutes a large portion of the population. Hence, political parties are relying on the youth to cast their votes.
I am Abelihle Mthethwa at this Cape Peninsula University of Technology in Cape Town.
All right, so that report from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and giving us a sense that I suppose we've kind of been sensing for a while now. Let's now be joined by Mandilake Dlula, who's a third-year journalism student from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. He did the research for that particular story that we've just seen. A very good morning to you, Mandilake. Thanks so much for joining us. That story that you showed us, it seems to be a theme that's playing out across the country. Did it surprise you, some of the comments that were coming through?
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Yes, definitely, as you know, that the youth constitutes a large proportion of our population in South Africa. So what we did was to sort of like see with the students in asking them whether are the posters as well as the campaigning that is currently happening in the country running down to the 8th of May elections, are those posters and campaigning saying anything to them, and are they convincing enough for them to actually vote in the 8th of May? So what we did in compiling the insert that you've just seen right now is that we needed to look at the demographics of the students in terms of the race, as well as the gender. As you know, that South Africa is quite a multiracial country. But Peter, in terms of the overall impression that we got from the insert is that students are really disinterested in politics, and they are very much disinterested in voting at all. I think because one of the students, some of them were basically saying that there's nothing new. In every 5 years, everything is the same, nothing changes. Although that they felt that, okay, since it's their first time voting, they will vote just for, in terms of the experience, just to get the experience of voting for the first time, but they don't want to sort of like put their hopes up high because they haven't seen anything positive happening within the country. Now, I think one of the things that the students are actually concerned about is jobs, because they're afraid that once they do graduate eventually, will there be jobs for them? Because we know that unemployment is a big issue in our country, and there's a lot of graduates out there who are without a job. So those are one of the concerns, as well as their living conditions back within their community. I mean, some people are living in shacks and so forth. So the living conditions within the community. And another thing is crime. They get robbed while going to campus and so forth. So they very much not quite convinced, although one student actually was saying that the EFF is they can relate more to the EFF because they're very young people and they're very vibrant in their approach.
So let me ask you this, Mandilake. They're not interested in national politics, but there does seem to be a vibrant politics on campus itself, especially when it comes to choosing the SRC. Why the disconnect from campus to the national story? Well, Peter, I mean, if you look, the varsity politics as well as your national in the whole country politics is very different. When it comes to your varsity politics, it's the struggle and the fight is far more different compared to the national. What they fighting for in the varsity politics is the challenges, maybe free education and things like that. So there's quite a gap between varsity politics as well as your national politics, because your national politics are dealing with quite a wider spectrum of the living conditions, the community, and overall. And your varsity politics only deals within the varsity challenges. So I think that's the particular difference there. All right, okay. And then perhaps finally I want to ask about you and your studies. Are you finding that the teaching that you're getting is preparing you for the journalism that's required for young people who are going to be the consumers of the news. I sometimes wonder as an older journalist whether I'm speaking the right language to young people.
Well, I would say, Peter, obviously, as you said, that you are much older generation of journalism. I think right now what they actually preparing us, because as you know that we're living in a digital world, news are updated within seconds, and right now what we're learning is that we're learning in terms of Twitter, Facebook, and things like that. So that's where we sort of like get our news from, and things are much more quicker than that than the traditional media, which is your TV, your radio. Young people don't want to be watching a 30-minute bulletin on TV. They would rather go on Twitter and see an update. They would rather go on Facebook. They would rather go on YouTube, because that's this is the digital age. This is the generation where we consume our news. So I think even now the way that we are learning, we're learning more of mobile journalism, that you not necessarily in the newsroom and compiling your news for people. You can just basically use your phone, and you compiling everything within your phone, and within seconds you're already distributing those particular news. So there's a big difference, Peter, as you said, from the old journalism to us, the current journalists that are the future.
Mandilaka, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and thanks so much for your story and your insights, and I hope that the politicians have been paying attention. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, so that's the team from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and let me bring in my guest editors today. Did that surprise you? I suppose
I'm not surprised. I mean, they are young. They do things differently. I have my daughter is 27 years old. I see her behavior. She's a professional. I really relate to what he is saying. My son is 32. I can see how he behaves. And that is why I said, when you were asking around political pressure, I said, things have changed. Politicians must understand that if they want the youth vote, you won't find the youth vote on SABC News Bulletin, because they can't. Their concentration, they can't sit there and watch 24 hours. The digital platform is quite important. And two, as someone, even though I'm old school, I'm almost on my way out. It is for that reason I'm trying to be active on social media. And when I look at the responses all the time when I talk about news, because that's all what I do, the responses that I get all the time are from young people, from different race groups, but also across the world. And they start, when they respond, Meso, I'm like, okay.
This must be a young person.
Yeah, it's a young person. Yeah. And I have learned to kind of communicate with them. I have tried to understand their language, to try and ensure that whatever we do at the SABC as foreign desk, they do follow us. And
so
I'm
new
happy
media is
doing
really,
it. They're doing
it's much bigger than we ever thought. I mean,
it's huge.
This idea that we have a news bulletin at 8 o'clock at night that we grew up on, that's a thing of the past now.
Yeah, you look at the SABC digital platform, you'll be shocked the numbers there.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that the advertisers haven't realized that. For example, people are talking about SAFM that has lost their viewership. Go and check the live streams, 2 million.
On the same
worldwide,
channel.
not only in South Africa. So we need to reskill ourselves as journalists and perhaps get training. But my concern with the young journalists, and I hope the lecturers in the universities, please assist them. Don't just focus on technology, content, how to put the content out there and compile good content.
Yeah. Azola, your thoughts?
My thoughts, particularly on the social media part of it. I think these are the first elections where social media is having such a huge impact. And as I've said before, written before in an article that is published on our website, that there's also a trend of influencing on social media. So you get opposing views. People debate critically or sometimes not so critically on social media platforms, particularly Twitter, which is very much more instant. And people can change their views about a political party, about a political personality, about even the fact of voting itself. So I'm not really surprised about the voter disinterest, the youth voter disinterest and apathy. Also political party manifestos are very silent on issues that affect the youth,
But my fear for social media journalism is you've got 120 characters, and with this influences, a lot of young people take whatever they've read in 120 characters as gospel truth, and they don't interrogate. You hear things like, I don't know, if the DA come back, apartheid will come back. Do you know what I mean? And nobody stops to interrogate whether that could possibly be true or not. But I hear these kinds of things. Is that not a fear of this new media?
It is. It's definitely a fear. And MMA is actually working against that, this disinformation that is very much rapid and rampant on social media. So we have what we call... we have tools basically as MMA where we can spot misinformation and disinformation, which is sometimes deliberate. So people can go onto our website and check there and they will find the tools. But it's really, there's that question around ethics where people are just, posting stuff that are slanderous to another party, which are also not true. So there is that rise. So the people also who consume social media have to be quite also vigilant to also check the source, verify the source, who's tweeting that, how many followers do they have, is this person a troll or is it an actual human being behind the computer screen on the other side?
The bots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bots.
All right. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll start unpacking some of these papers and also the election coverage in general as we count down to the May 8 election. Stay with us.
We're explorers. We always have been, endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
Exe, ke sireletsa bokamoso ba ka le lelapa la ka. Exe.
With my ex, there's no problem that can't be solved.
Vote in the national and provincial elections 8 May 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The IEC needs your address before you vote. Your ex is your say.
Can we imagine a South Africa in which clean business is the norm?
You get political power, you leave the economy alone.
How does capitalists suddenly own the sun?
Is it the government afraid of the big business?
Who are the criminals?
I'm involved in corruption.
What do you think?
You are bound to have problems if you've got a taxi owner, a pharmacist and an accountant trying to solve your energy problems.
People of South Africa, I have failed and I am sorry.
Don't miss the big debate
every Sunday at 7 on SABC2.
Welcome back. You're watching Media Monitor. It's time now for us to take a look at what's making front page news in our newspapers. And we were hoping to cross to Sudan because a lot of things have been happening in that country in recent weeks. And unfortunately, we've not been able to raise our journalists that we had agreed to chat to. But it's okay. We'll continue to explore that. We've got our foreign editor here in particular who understands that region quite well. So, Sophie, some people might say that this is almost like a Arab Spring in Sudan that happened in recent weeks.
Yes, but no, because in terms of Arab Spring, the outcome thereof was the situation where, again, you had the military being in charge. I mean, take, for an example, countries such as Egypt and Libya. It's a problem. Yeah. But Sudanese are saying we want civilian rule. Yes, the president is off the way now. He's in prison. We are not going to allow the military to take over. So for me, I think they're getting it right, because we can't have the situation on the continent where the military is using new tactics to stage coups, and they take over. Then the outcome becomes lots of generals in cabinet.
Right.
Generals are trained to fight and to defend the country and its territory, not to be soft.
Yeah.
Therefore, I think the Sudanese are saying it's about us. The final word will be from us.
What do you think is different this time around? I mean, Bashir has been in power for so long, and then you had this movement of people that just decided that enough is enough now. And
it's young people.
Yeah.
It's young people. They get restless, and when they lose it, you will not be able to contain their anger. Coupled with oppositions, they will take advantage. The international interest comes in with international community taking different postures because of interest of their countries. For an example, in Sudan's case, oil. Therefore, I think it's a number of factors that has led to this situation. But young people on the continent, I had the journalist we spoke to earlier on saying they are not interested in politics. I disagree. Not only in South Africa, the entire continent. Wherever I have been, they are very, very informed in terms of the politics of their countries. Even on the continental matters, they know exactly what they want. And their challenges are similar. And when they go to the streets and they use that social media and technology, it's very difficult to contain their anger. It is for that reason I think it's time for leaders on the continent, but around the world, to ensure that we really, really look at the frustration of the young people around the world and we address their concerns, because they constitute a huge number of the population around the world.
Zola, I guess what Sophie is saying is that, you know, Sudan is just an example of the sentiment across the continent of young people in general.
Definitely. And I mean, for me as a media practitioner, as a person who loves media and journalism, I think the major concern around this time where there's an uprising in Sudan would be media freedom. Because what I've noticed is that the people who are naming the uprising, who are giving it a name, who are calling it an Arab Spring or whatnot, are actually foreign journalists. We are not hearing from the journalists there in Sudan what they are saying, how they characterize what is happening, and what are the actual issues. I guess that is the main on that particular part. But on the youth being dissenting voices, I mean, you've seen that throughout history. This country itself, South Africa, was liberated by very young people. So Uma is very correct to say that we should actually watch the discontent of young people and pay special attention to it, because it can lead to many things such as that we see in Sudan. I mean, recently we saw with the Roads Must Fall, Fees Must Fall protests, where things really were,
Okay.
Yeah, because when you see that young woman who's leading the protest, a woman, and very young, 25 or 26, a professional, And that's what's happening even in South Africa. Particularly young black professionals are very frustrated. Those who are not working, even those who are currently working, because the system itself is frustrating them. You know, they are sidelined and they've got these degrees, and when they studied, they thought they were studying to ensure that they achieve better life, but also they are able to help their families. But they are so squeezed. I mean, accommodation here in Joburg is so expensive, transport, food, and everything. And therefore, they can't enjoy. It's very, very, very. The parents must assist them with the pensions and SASA grants to help them. It's very, very difficult.
And this actually goes back to the political party manifestos, and most of them are actually silent on these issues. If they do mention, they just mention free education without actually giving a thorough breakdown of what they understand as free education.
In the manifesto you can hide actually. All right, let's come back home a little bit and discuss some of the issues in the papers, on the front pages, and also some that are not there. And the one thing for me that's quite glaring, yesterday was Freedom Day, 25 years later, and I can't see the mention of Freedom Day on any of the major newspapers. Is that not a front page story, or am I not getting it?
For me, it's a front page story. Where are we? Okay, perhaps in terms of the speech or what politicians said about Freedom Day, it's not an issue. But as journalists, it is our responsibility to come up with strong angles of stories. Therefore, we have to tell that story. We don't have to wait for politicians and use the sound bites. What have we achieved? What are the challenges? I mean, we are discussing young people right now. Perhaps 25 years on, what are young people saying? Are we, as a country, working hard to ensure that we address their concerns? I think,
for me, I'm not necessarily surprised. It is definitely a front page story, but I mean, the preoccupation has been for the past month elections. So I would expect to find, front page stories.
But you can link it to elections.
Definitely, you
can. It's an election story.
Yeah,
it is an election story. 25 years down the line, we're going to the polls in a few days to come. Where are we? Are we ready? As a country, the Electoral Commission, South Africa in general, where are we? Where are we?
I think they're taking it from the angle of it's a thing that recurs. It's annual thing. It will happen again next year. But now there is a Zondo Commission that is happening that also implicates political party leaders who, some of them are actually on lists going to parliament. So it's really, really, for me,
All right. So I'm looking at these papers, and overwhelmingly it's corruption, it's about certain political people, and I would even go so far as to say a faction within the ANC that's focused on the papers. People might start to think that there's an agenda, or am I misreading this?
No, I honestly don't think you're misreading it, and I think that is the discontent that the public has had with the media, where they've been saying that they are biased. Some of them have been saying that particular media houses belong to white monopoly capital and whatnot, because the media has actually been slanted towards a particular faction within the ANC, giving it a particular kind of coverage, and the other focusing on particular things that they're doing. So you're not reading it wrong. I think the media also needs to reflect, and check how it's actually putting out things, because it's really also denting on it as an institution where people are losing trust in the media.
All right. Very quickly, what's not in the paper?
For me, the manifesto. I would love to see a situation where we really, really interrogate the manifestos of different political parties, because this election, it's about the challenge we are facing as a country. And let's check those manifestos. Are they going to address these challenges? Two, I found this week I attended a media briefing where Kumi Naidoo, the Secretary General of Amnesty International, was giving a manifesto list of the Amnesty International, raising concerns in terms of what's not in the manifestos. And what stand out for me were two issues. I'm not downplaying education and all that, because they are there. Climate change. We are currently facing a challenge in this region where we have floods and cyclones. I haven't heard a word from SADC in terms of the early warning system center, but even our country in terms of our leaders right now, what are they going to do with this problem? Are they going to wake up late when the crisis is upon us and it's very difficult to undo? And also the issue of xenophobia, politicians making statements that are likely to incite the public that is currently frustrated.
We're going to have to leave it there for the time being. We're going to take a quick break. Is that correct? Yes. And we'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
We've seen that Brent crude oil rise about 30% this year alone.
Brent crude that's going steadily firmer speaks to a global economy that's in good shape. What we don't want to see are supply interruptions or sudden spikes.
The Bank of Athens has become Grow Bank. It plans to be a bank using digital and personable relations with its customers in the agricultural and food value chain space.
We're a lucky bank in that we are small. We're already working with artificial intelligence to allow us to manage our customer data.
Agriculture is a business. If we're going to take people, millions of them out of poverty, we've got to turn agriculture into a mega sector that works for everybody.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, ek dink was ons almal was ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke so ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e se makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, Channel 404.
Right, welcome back. We're starting to wrap things up on Media Monitor, but last word from our guest editors says taking a look at the week ahead, and this is the last week before elections, so I guess it's going to be a big week for political parties. Azola, what do you expect this week?
Definitely a big week for political parties. So what I'm probably expecting is continued electioneering, also the case between Malema and Karima Brown. I expect that to also continue, and of course the big day, May 8th, which is the other week. So those are the things that I think are going to be
the big talking
things
items
going ahead.
Sophie?
Final push for all political parties campaigning, and I'm hoping that perhaps we'll, as media, will focus on issues and avoid personalities, but we still have to reflect personalities. Secondly, Sudan, and then Libya, which is currently a failed state, and also the internal tension within the ANC because of the list and all that. I think it will continue to dominate the news.
Do you think that these political parties, is it too late, or do you think that they can still influence in this last week? Hazola?
I don't think it's too late. I honestly don't think it's too late, particularly for people who've already registered. So I think the parties can really push, can win over some people who are registered to vote. I honestly don't think it's too late. But before I end, I had mentioned earlier that MMA has some tools to filter fake news. So one of them is the political party ad repository, of which we are in partnership with the IEC, so political parties can upload their original posters, because recently we saw that there was a fake ANC poster. So there's another one, Real 411, and then there's also Rover, which is Real Over Rubbish, where we have a segment on our social media pages where we put two news items together, real and fake, and we ask the public to identify, and then we tell them. Yes, so it's those.
Brilliant.
It's never too late. Even one vote counts, and therefore the final push is very critical. For an example, the final push rallies, some call it Siangoba, Tselatuba, Reqetile, you know, there are different names.
Yes.
That's very
Yeah.
important, because you realize this
That's
week
your last
the two
message.
big parties, that is the ANC and the DA, they even brought in their former leaders, the
Yeah,
big guns,
that's just
to
quite
convince the middle class. That's where the problem is right now.
All right. To both of you, thank you so much indeed for coming through and sharing your insights. To you at home, thanks so much indeed for watching Media Monitor. Please join us again at the same time, same place next week for more of the same. Have a good week, everybody, and think about where you put your vote. It's going to affect the next 5 years of your life.
Solani Mkiva says that they believe that the king should be released and that they are not being opportunistic.
The last 4 years, we have been engaging with government. It cannot be a post-colonial government that begins to jail a king in a context of what actually happened.
Bobby Solomons, he's the spokesperson of the Alex Shutdown Committee, the multi-billion rand Alexander Renewal Project. Nothing came of that.
Community wants to know what really happened to the money.
The creative director of the label, Mansu, that of course means black is beautiful in Sesotho. What has been your experience in that regard, given, you know, some of the more established labels that you have managed to work with?
It is hard. 15 years is a long time. There's a lot of sacrifice for your family to make for you.
This is the thing.
Without the brief.
This is it this morning.
Reporter Sipho Stearman. Sipho, thank you very much indeed. What are they protesting about?
Well, they're talking about their living conditions, that they don't have clean drinking water, they don't have proper toilets, they don't have proper housing.
Lopang, tell us what's happening where you are.
Early this morning, one classroom was set alight at the school. Reptiles is creeping into the classrooms like snakes. Residents are saying that they've been failed by the Mokaga municipality.
This is what you see. People are angry. Let the municipal manager go.
I don't deny anything that is happening in Africa, you know, so I'm not against any image being shown. But my biggest issue is that multinationals or people from outside, like, they only choose to show a certain face, you know, and which is the hungry face. It's not running down the nose and the flat nose and the long neck, you know, and the ribs sticking out, and, you know, all of those things we do have, and we have them in abundance. But there's also other things that we have as Africans, you know, that are on the opposite end of that, you know, and all of these things need to be shown in balance, you know, so that we can really know where we are and where we are not. We can have a true perspective of where we are as a people, and also, like, the other people can know where we are as well.
I think many films have been made about the continent, you know, which have been very superficial and sort of very much been about sort of keeping the stereotype and try to simplify stories and lives and people. I think the opportunity for people across this continent to start really owning the technology, owning their own images and telling stories that really are about them, you know, their authentic experiences, about their village, their community, their family. I think there is an opportunity, you know, so I think that's what sort of, as a filmmaker working in Africa as an African, that's what excites me.
My feeling is always that we must move to the point where we're no longer just reacting and we're writing. Unfortunately, we're forced to always react because we go watch something and go, yeah, but that's not our image, I'm going to go home and write the image. That's the starting point, because even if you recorrect the image, you still have to say something, or it has to be entertaining.
Since he ascended the throne of the Zulus in 1816, Shaka has forged one of the mightiest empires the African continent has ever known.
Bayete inkosi.